I'm here today to talk about something that I feel is not talked about nearly enough. This is depression. There's a prominent stigma around depression and mental illness in general that can make people who struggle with these issues have feelings of shame or disgrace or embarrassment, even though this isn't something that they can help and it's not something to be ashamed about. I also think there are a lot of misconceptions about mental illness in general, and the only way that we're going to be able to stop them is if we start talking about it. Depression is a mood disorder that causes persistent sadness and loss of interest. This is a standard definition, but it entails so much more. While struggling with depression, a person can experience some or all of these symptoms, including feelings of sadness, loneliness, hopelessness, changes in sleep, fatigue, changes in appetite, loss of interest, loss of motivation, trouble concentrating, unexplained physical problems, and/or thoughts of death and suicide. These are all really serious and sometimes disabling problems that many young people face when facing these issues as a young person. It's just pinned on being a teenager. And I know that everybody has bad days and will experience some of these things on occasion, but typically in order to be diagnosed with depression, a person must experience a major depressive episode with a lot of these symptoms for at least 2 weeks. Adolescence can be a really hard time in general for everybody, but when you add depression to the mix, for some it can feel almost impossible, especially if they don't know what they're going through and they're not getting the help that they need. So I would strongly encourage anybody at any age to reach out for help if they feel that they need it, because this is not something that anybody should have to go through alone. I also encourage you to lend out support if you feel like somebody is going through something like this, because it can really make the world's difference. So now that I've gone over what depression really is, I want to put it in perspective, because I think it's really easy to acknowledge that this is an issue, but it might resonate with you more if you know just how common it is. Depression rates in young adults are at an all-time high. By the age of 18, at least 11% of adolescents will experience depression, and half of those cases begin by the age of 14. A lot of these teens struggle in silence, partially because of this stigma around depression and lack of knowledge. And that's also partially why suicide is the third leading cause of death in ages 15 to 24. Those are really big numbers. And again, I think the only way that we're going to stop this is if we start talking about it and stop giving into the stigma. I think it's really easy to play into this stigma just because depression isn't exactly a comfortable or frankly pleasant thing to talk about. And a lot of the time, instead of trying to find out what it really is or how to help, we either ignore it or sometimes ridicule it. I think it's also really important that we start educating our youth on what depression is and how to get help so that no one has to go through this alone. Because in my early teen years, when I started to experience all these symptoms, I didn't know what was going on and what to do about them. So in my transition from middle school to high school, I started to experience all the classic symptoms of unexplained sadness and loneliness, and I didn't know what they were and I didn't know what to do about them. All my life I played sports. I loved them. I loved soccer especially. I started playing soccer in kindergarten and I continued to play soccer all throughout the end of my 8th grade year. But when I got to high school, I completely lost interest. I did not want to do anything. During my 9th grade year after school, the only thing I would really want to do was go home and sleep, and usually that's what I would do. This in itself should have been a pretty big red flag, but again, I tried really hard to ignore it. As my 9th grade year went on, things started to get worse, and I just was constantly feeling upset, crying a lot. I had to acknowledge that something was going on, and I finally decided to do something about it. So I reached out to my mom and I told her everything that I had been experiencing and feeling those past couple months. And I'm really lucky because I have a mom that was really supportive of me and instantly started working on getting me help. In my 9th grade year, I was diagnosed with clinical depression and I began therapy. But even after being diagnosed, I was really ignorant to what that meant. I was under the impression that I was the only person my age going through this. I actually remember going into school one day and seeing like a newly decorated wall, and it had like facts about depression and pictures of celebrities that have struggled with it. And I just thought, I was shocked. I thought, that like they put that up because they knew I was just diagnosed with depression. And it's crazy to think that I felt targeted by something that was there to support me. I think a lot of those feelings stemmed from this stigma that was installed in me my whole life. I thought that no one could know about this and I couldn't tell anybody and this had to be this big secret about me. But looking back on it, I realized that that's not the case, and there are so many things and people around me that are there to help me. I consider myself really lucky because I had a really strong support system in my own home, but I know that's not the case for everybody, so I want to tell you about some outside resources. Every Ann Arbor public school, there are tons of adults and counselors that are there to help you no matter what you're going through. There are really great ones out there, you should take my word for it. I know in a lot of the Ann Arbor public high schools, there are peer programs so that during the day you can go and talk to people your own age if you're not comfortable talking to an adult. There are other resources. The first one is the Ozone House, and this is a really great place that offers constant support. And they have 2 locations. One is in Ypsilanti and one is in Ann Arbor. They also have a crisis hotline that you can call 24 hours a day, anytime you need it. The next one is the National Suicide Prevention Hotline, and you can call this also 24 hours a day, no matter what you're going through. It doesn't have to exactly be suicide. They will connect you to a skilled and trained counselor in your area that will help you with anything. And lastly, NAMI, National Alliance on Mental Illness of Washtenaw County. This is a nonprofit organization that really works on bettering the lives of persons affected by mental illness, so it could be firsthand or secondhand. They also have a crisis hotline that you can call anytime. They also offer a lot of mental illness education courses and support groups that are no cost. And so I would really encourage anyone, no matter what they're going through, to check them out because they're really good. So if there was one thing that I would want you to take away from today, is that depression is real and it can be hard, but you're not alone. Thank you.